I've been a dad for more than 3 decades, and the older I get the more the years flatten into the feel of things rather than the dates. The smell of damp grass from early Saturday games, the weight of a sleeping toddler carry from car to crib while winter air nips at your ears, the way a bathroom light makes a teenager's face look older than it should. Those are the mile markers. Not birthdays, not pay stubs. I don't say that as philosophy. I say it because it's the truest way I know to explain why I kept paying my son's mortgage long after the emergency was over. I'm in my early 60s now, divorced but on good terms, with a house that no longer needs my hands every weekend and a spreadsheet that looks steady enough to fall asleep on. I've got 2 pensions, a boring portfolio, and a pickup truck old enough to vote. I've also got a son named Paul, 32, who can take apart a sink trap like it insulted his mother, and who still forgets to sign the back of checks. When he bought his first house 4 years ago, little craftsman on a leafy street, front steps that pitch forward like they're eager to meet you, the bank liked my mustache more than it liked his credit. Co-signer, they said, and I said yes before the loan officer finished saying the word. Back then the deal was simple. He'd cover the mortgage and I'd float him for a few months while he got his feet under him. Rates were kinder, prices were meaner, and his job was still fresh enough to make him worry he'd be found out as an imposter. I set up an automatic transfer from my account to his lender, just for a bit. It felt like putting a hand on the small of his back while he walked a balance beam, steadying without steering. The first winter in that house, we snaked a drain, painted trim, and argued about whether ceiling fans were a crime. He called when the heater clicked too loudly and when an outlet looked at him funny. We laughed. We worked. We ate sandwiches over the sink and wiped paint from our knuckles with the same rag. Every time he said thank you, he meant it. Every time I said you've got this, I meant that too. Time, though, time turns a temporary measure into a routine if you don't keep track of your own hands. The automatic transfer kept doing its quiet job while life got noisy. He had a promotion, then a breakup, then a health scare that turned out to be nothing and still cost $3,000. Each time he said, just a little longer, and I said of course, because when you love your kid you confuse help with habit. By the 3rd year the bank's emails felt like a newsletter for a club I never intended to join. I wasn't being used. I was being predictable. There's a difference, and it's one I taught him by example. Christmas has always been our holiday, the one we guard even when other things fray. Even after the divorce, we danced around the awkward and found our rhythm. Stockings at my place because the mantel has little brass hooks that have survived 3 moves, breakfast casserole that could put a linebacker down for a nap, a record from the 70s that skips on the same chorus every year like it's clearing its throat. We do oranges, we do coffee with too much cream, we do the nativity set with the plastic star propped by a folded post-it because it broke in 1996 and never learned better manners. Christmas is where my calendar gets its spine. This year the cold came on shy, as if it didn't want to interrupt anyone. I hauled the box with the tree up from the basement, and unbent the branches like old fingers. I set the wreath on the door, tied the ribbon twice because it likes to sag, and stood on the front walk to check the angle like I was surveying something important. I sent Paul a picture of the living room, soft lamps, the record sleeve leaning against the turntable, the ugly angel we have refused to replace out of principle. He sent back a shot of his cat, the one he never wanted, sleeping with his face mashed into the couch like a man who lost a bet. "Lights Sunday?" he wrote. "I'll bring coffee." That was our routine. We'd shuffle around his yard untangling strings like we were making spaghetti. He'd staple the eaves with a precision that only shows up when you're decorating for neighbors, and I'd hold the ladder and tell him to be safer than he's planning to be. On the 23rd I made an early run to the bakery that remembers me as the olive loaf guy and came home with a bag that made the truck smell like I was transporting a very small, very friendly pizzeria. I wrapped presents at the table with the movie I know by heart murmuring in the background, and I put a small box with a good leather wallet on the coffee table. Inside it I slid a note I'd scribbled when the house was quiet, for whatever you carry next. I meant work IDs and library cards, but I also meant mistakes and new traditions and the way men our size carry silence. I went out to adjust the wreath. Our street steals decorations the way raccoons steal scents from dogs, and my phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Paul. I wiped my hand on my jeans and opened it, expecting a list or a joke or some question about oven temperatures. What I got was one small sentence that rang louder than it had any right to. I wasn't expecting you for Christmas this year. At first I thought he'd texted the wrong person. His girlfriend's mother and I share the same initial in his phone. I waited for the bubble that says correction. It didn't come. I called. It rang out. The air on the porch found the part of my neck my scarf had missed, and I stood there feeling both cold and foolish and more awake than coffee ever makes me. When he replied, it was a second text. We're doing Christmas at Lauren's parents'. Didn't think you'd want to drive over there. Figured we'd catch up after. I wish I could tell you I was gracious instantly. What I was is quiet. I set the phone face down on the porch rail and watched a crow talk nonsense to a puddle. I went back inside and sat in my chair and looked at that wallet like it had become evidence in a case I hadn't realized I was prosecuting. The house got loud with small sounds, the radiator ticking, the turntable humming an old, tired hum, the refrigerator deciding to be industrious. I typed out 3 different replies and erased them all because each one either apologized for existing or kicked a door I didn't want to break. I finally sent, "Thanks for letting me know." It looked like something you'd leave under a windshield wiper after bumping someone in a parking lot. It was also the most honest thing I could manage. The sting was tidy. Not a wound, not a collapse, just a precise little slice you don't notice until you wash your hands. I sat with it. I reminded myself he's in love. Their traditions are new and noisy and they shuffle people like cards. I told myself that being left out of a plan is not the same as being unloved. All of that helped, but not enough to quiet the part of me that felt like a porch light someone forgot to switch on. I thought about the money in the background, the automatic transfer that had been running for years like a fan you forget you turned on because the noise becomes the room. I don't tie love to money, and I don't buy seats at tables with rent. But generosity doesn't grow where it's taken for granted, it dries into something brittle and resentful. The thought that arrived would not leave. If he didn't expect me for Christmas, why should he expect my Monday morning payments? I cleaned. That's my first language when I'm trying not to do anything I'll regret. I wiped down the counters. I straightened the books on the coffee table that never stay straight. I watered the brave plant my sister swears is unkillable, and which I have brought to the edge of the afterlife 3 times. None of it gave me the quiet I wanted. So I opened my laptop. The mortgage login lives in a folder labeled important nonsense because that's how I make myself laugh when I'm being competent. 2-factor auth sent a code that I fat-fingered twice. Then the dashboard came up, blue and friendly, like it wasn't holding anything sharp. I clicked through to external transfers and found the little train I'd set running years ago, monthly, the 15th, cheerful checkmark next to active. I read the fine print on the cancel button like there would be a riddle. There wasn't. This action will stop future transfers. You may re-enable at any time. I stared at those words for the same amount of time it takes toast to burn if you forget it. I thought of all the little fixes that transfer had paid for in spirit if not in ledger, a better night's sleep when his hours got cut, the smug little confidence that comes from knowing the roof is technically the bank's problem but the roof over your head is safe, the way a mortgage payment isn't just money but momentum. I also thought about being invited to things that mattered. I thought about a tradition canceled by text message. I clicked cancel. A confetti-free checkmark told me I'd done it. I set a one-time payment for the current month because I'm not a saboteur and I don't do gotcha with roofs. Then I closed the laptop and pressed my palms flat on the lid the way you do when you know something is over, not in a dramatic sense, just in the honest one. Christmas morning, I poured coffee into the mug with the chip that matches my front tooth and peeled an orange like it held a clue. I put on the record and let it skip. I texted Paul Merry Christmas and I love you and got a picture back, matching pajamas, a living room I've never been in, a tree with disciplined lights and presents that look like they were wrapped by someone who owns a bone folder. He was happy. I took that seriously. Loving your kid means letting their joy exist even when you're not in the frame. I ate eggs over the sink because I was both too sentimental to sit and too proud to pretend I wasn't alone. I took a walk and waved at the neighbor I only ever see when she's bringing in groceries. I came home and let the house be a house. In January, a bank rep called to verify that I had canceled the external transfer. Her voice was kind in the way people are kind when their scripts tell them to be. I confirmed. 2 weeks later, Paul called. His hello had the shape of a question. Hey, the lender said last month's payment came from you, but this month it didn't. Did your bank mess up? No glitch, I said. I made January manually. I canceled the automatic transfers going forward. Silence stretched, but not the angry kind. The thinking kind, where you can almost hear a gear nudge another gear. Oh, he said. I wasn't planning for that. Neither was I said. But it was a temporary measure that I let become permanent. That's on me. I'm changing it. Is this about Christmas? He asked, not defensive so much as trying to draw a map. Partly, I said. It's about expectations. Yours and mine. You always said the day doesn't matter, that we can celebrate whenever. I believe that, I said. And I also believe that courtesy matters. If you didn't expect me for Christmas, don't expect my money either. He breathed out, and I pictured him standing in his kitchen, hand in his hair like he always does when he's unlearning something. Wow, he said softly. Okay. I'm not punishing you, I said. I love you. I just realized I was participating in your life in a way that let you not participate in it. I'll help in true emergencies. I'm not your mortgage plan. That's embarrassing, he said, and there was no flinch in it, just the honest admission of a man noticing his own shoes. Embarrassment is usually just growth making a noise, I said. Let's talk logistics. We went through his budget. He had one, half-built and well-intentioned, like a deck without stairs. We moved a few numbers. I told him to ask the lender to change the due date to the day after his paycheck landed. He didn't know you could do that. We found the leaks, subscriptions he forgot to cancel, a grocery bill fattened by takeout. We made a plan that had him paying this month and next and every month after, tight but possible. I didn't rescue. I walked beside him. After we hung up, I went for another walk because fresh air does better work in me than self-congratulation. The sky had that gray felt look winter puts on when it's tired of performing. A teenager slid on a patch of ice and turned it into a dance rather than a fall. A dog stole a mitten and got chased like it was a heist movie. The world didn't clap for me, which was perfect. I hadn't achieved anything heroic. I had just stopped doing a thing that wasn't mine to do anymore. My sister called to say she'd heard there was drama, a phrase she uses whenever two people have different opinions about meatloaf. I told her it was quieter than that. My ex left a voicemail approving of the boundary and wishing it had arrived with more frosting. Lauren texted a photo of Paul fixing a cabinet door at their place with the caption, "He learned from the best," which made me laugh because I hang cabinet doors like they're trying to eavesdrop on the floor. I sent a heart. I don't need to be best at anything in their house. I just need to be respected in mine. The first of the month came. He paid. He texted me a screenshot, not as proof but as partnership. Tight but doable, he wrote. Then life heard him and sent a plumbing bill. He called and described the sound as a frog trapped in a trombone. I talked him through the shut-off valve and gave him the name of the plumber who has been rescuing me from my own confidence since 1998. He handled it. He sent the invoice with a skull emoji and then a picture of the fixed pipe with a flexed arm. We are our own small language again. Spring showed up smelling like wet mulch and apology. I helped him aerate the yard because the machine is easier with two stubborn backs. We did not talk about Christmas or money. We talked about the cat's vendetta against potted plants and a podcast he loves and the way he's learning to sleep without taking his phone to bed like a teddy bear. He brought me coffee beans he swore would change my life. I brewed them and felt exactly as alive as before, which is not nothing. In June he came over for dinner. I overcooked chicken and pretended it was intentional. While he rinsed plates, he said into the sink's echo, "I told Lauren I handled Christmas badly." The faucet noise made a curtain we could stand behind. "What did she say?" I asked. "That awkward is just a room you walk through," he said. "We're doing breakfast at your place this year and dinner there. If that works for you." It did. My yes was smaller than a cheer and larger than a nod. I felt it in my ribs like a stitch that had been removed. We talked about nothing for the rest of the meal because sometimes nothing is the best dessert. I'm writing this because I keep seeing versions of the same question asked in the quiet spaces of men my age. How do you stop helping without stopping loving? For me, the answer was a boundary drawn with a calm hand. Not a wall. A handrail. It gave both of us something to hold while we kept walking. If you're a father and your generosity has become the wallpaper of your kid's life, you don't have to tear down the house. You can change the paper. You can turn off the auto draft and turn up the conversation. You can let embarrassment be the price of admission to adulthood. I didn't cancel love. I canceled a habit that was making both of us a little smaller. Last week he borrowed my ladder. He stood in the doorway like he always does, one foot already pointed toward his car, a man forever mid-errand. "You know," he said, "I didn't actually expect you to stop paying. I guess I didn't think about it at all." He smiled like it pinched. "I'm glad you did." "Me too," I said, and I meant it all the way down. We wrestled the ladder into his trunk and he patted it like a tame animal. Before he pulled away, he said, "Breakfast here on Christmas. I'll bring the coffee. You do the oranges." It was June. The air smelled like cut grass and someone testing fireworks in daylight. I nodded. "I've got the oranges," I said. "I've got the oranges. I've got the old ornaments, the record that skips respectfully, the chipped mug that fits my hand like a handshake. I've got a son who is learning to be a man in front of me without burning off the part that knows how to be a son. And I've got room in my house again, a quiet that doesn't accuse me, a peace that arrived not as triumph but as relief." I didn't slam a door. I closed the tab. I turned off a small, invisible engine and noticed that the house was still warm. Maybe warmer. Maybe the warmth coming from the right places now, the stove, the vents, the small radiators of two people who respect each other enough to pay their own bills and to pick up the phone anyway, not because money is moving, but because love is. I rinsed the mug and set it to dry. I straightened the wreath one last time. I checked the lock and let the heat run low. I fed the cat a treat he did not earn. I folded the dish towel and thought of next December. I turned the record, let the chorus skip, and didn't mind. I wrote his name on a sticky note and stuck it to the fridge like a promise. I walked the hallway slowly, counting the floorboards the way I did when he was small. I opened the wallet box and closed it again, smiling at my own sentiment. I let the house be quiet and found that the quiet liked me back. I scraped a bit of wax from the mantel and remembered the year the candles leaned. I put the ladder back in its corner and touched the rungs like an old friend. I checked the basement for leaks I knew weren't there, just to be sure. I washed the orange smell from my hands and kept the sweetness anyway. I turned off the tree and watched the room hold its shape without the lights. I stood at the window and saw my reflection older and softer, a good trade. I pulled the curtain and let the street keep its secrets. I breathed, easy as a man who finally set a good boundary. When Paul was little, we did Christmas Eve drives around the nicer neighborhoods to look at lights. He called them houses in costumes, and I let the phrase stick because it fit. We'd crawl past displays that looked like small power plants. He'd press his face to the glass and fog it with a soft laugh. I would say, "You know, those reindeer have to be fed extension cords," and he'd nod like I told him trade secrets. When we got home, he'd fall asleep on the couch with half a candy cane stuck to his sleeve. I'd carry him down the hallway, counting steps out of habit, 6 to the corner, 3 past the furnace closet, 2 more to his door. It's a long time ago, but the steps live in my feet. As a teenager he tried being loud, then tried being quiet, then tried being loud about how quiet he was. We survived each other. I taught him how to back a trailer without crying and how to apologize without the word if sitting in the middle like a splinter. He taught me that sarcasm is a bad lubricant for stuck feelings. Somewhere between his first shave and his first heartbreak, he learned to call me when he wasn't sure what the next ordinary move should be. I got good at answering without turning it into a test. Advice is a spice, not a sauce. When he was 24, he moved into an apartment that used to be nice, and had decided it no longer needed to try. The parking lot had a car on blocks that was older than me. He was proud of it anyway. We bought a second-hand couch together that left us both with mysterious scratches, and we ate pizza on the floor and declared it perfect. He called me from that place to tell me about the first time he paid rent and felt a click in his chest, like a key turned. I remember thinking, that's the sound I want you to hear again and again until it's not a trick. When he started talking about buying a house, he did it the way men talk about running a marathon when they hate jogging but love medals. I didn't push. I printed out a simple budget worksheet like I was my own father and slid it across the table at a diner that still serves eggs with a sidecar of suspicion. He filled it in. He winced at his own numbers. Then he started making slightly better ones on purpose. By the time the lender said cosigner, my yes was ready not just in my mouth but in my bones. I know all the arguments about enabling and independence and bootstraps. I also know that boots slip in mud. My job as I saw it was not to walk for him, but to stand close enough that if he stumbled he wouldn't disappear into a hole. The day he closed, he texted me a photo of his front door with the caption, "We did it." I stood in my kitchen and cried the ugly cry people think only happens in movies. Then I wiped my face and drove over with a toolbox and a bag of trash bags because a home wants both celebration and the boring stuff. We spent the first night sitting on the floor in an empty living room while the heater made persuasive noises and the cat investigated us like we were suspicious inventory. We planned where a couch might go and where a Christmas tree would look least like a fire hazard. He asked if he could borrow money for a fridge, and then changed his mind before I could answer. He bought a refrigerator with a dent on the side you'd only see if you were a mouse. Pride is a good dent sometimes. Christmases after that became little clinics in tradition maintenance. He'd come over early and we'd bake the same cinnamon rolls from the can because making them from scratch once taught us that you can ruin a holiday with ambition. He'd peel oranges with the care of a surgeon. We'd unwrap a few small things and save the rest until my sister arrived with a dish she calls potatoes Romanoff even though no one knows a Romanoff. We would put on the record, same one, same skip, and let memory do its work. I am not sentimental for sport. I'm sentimental because repetition is a language you speak to the part of your heart that doesn't read spreadsheets. The text that uninvited me didn't erase any of that. It just told me I had been demoted without a conversation. That's what hurt. The demotion wasn't from father to stranger, nothing that dramatic. It was from assumed to optional. That's a normal shift in a son's life. It's also a shift you name if you want your father to handle it gracefully. I would have driven across town in the snow with a casserole balanced on my lap and my hat on crooked and called it a good story later. I would have done breakfast at my place on the 26th. I would have done nothing but a walk. I just needed the dignity of a choice. The money question kept blowing in like a draft under the door. I resisted tying ribbon between the two things. Still, when I picture that automatic transfer, I see a little ghost of obligation floating with it, a silent assumption that I'll keep doing it because I've been doing it. Habits are useful servants and bad kings. I had let this one rule my calendar in a way that made me smaller. I don't want to be the kind of man who talks about boundaries like they're punishments. I want to be the kind who sets them quietly, and then keeps his hands busy with dishes while they settle in. So I made the clicks. It felt like fixing a leak, a slow, steady problem that requires you to turn the valve, wipe the water, and check back later. Cancel. Confirm. Manual payment once, because dignity isn't a blunt instrument. I didn't announce it the way people announce new gym memberships. I didn't put a sticky note on my mirror saying strong choices. I poured coffee and put the laptop away. The call that followed was as ordinary as any small fire you contain before it leaps. He didn't shout. I didn't sermonize. He asked if there was a glitch. I said there wasn't. He asked if it was about Christmas. I said partly. He said he was embarrassed. I said that sounded like the right feeling. He said he could make a plan. I asked if he wanted help looking at the numbers. We opened a shared spreadsheet and built a little bridge from this month to the next. He canceled 2 apps that have been charging him to be lonely. We cut his takeout budget but left room for Friday nights because deprivation breaks before it bends. He called the lender and moved the due date. He sighed like a tire seeing the nail come out. We ended the call without a fight and with a plan. That's as close to a miracle as I expect on a Wednesday. The days after were a gentle parade of consequences, nothing cinematic, just the quiet rearrangement that happens when reality is invited back to the table. He texted me meal prep photos like a teenager showing his report card. Lauren sent a picture of him at the hardware store looking like he'd been elected mayor of aisle 12. My sister tried to be neutral the way Switzerland tries, with chocolate. My ex and I traded 2 emails about tone and then switched to talking about the dog we no longer have because that's easier. I kept the wallet under the tree until New Year's, then tucked it into a drawer with the notes still inside. I'm saving it for the morning when a gift fits because we both know what it's for. Gifts want to land on sturdy tables. I stopped checking the bank app for the transfer like a man who quits looking at a thing he's already changed. The quiet that moved in wasn't smug. It was steady. It sat with me while I read and while I dusted the fan blades and while I ate leftovers cold. It didn't ask for a trophy. One afternoon in February, we installed a ceiling fan at his place because Winter had been practicing summer inside his living room. We argued gently about the bracket and about whether reading the instructions was cheating. He climbed the ladder and I footed it. He said from up there, without drama, "I miss breakfast." I said from down here, "So did I." He tightened a screw. "I should have asked you to come." I held the ladder and the line and said, "Thank you for saying that." The fan spun. The room approved. In March, he called to say he'd overpaid a bill on purpose, just to watch a number go down. He sounded like a man who had discovered the trick to a jar lid. In April, the car needed brakes. He handled it with a plan that didn't involve me, and then he called me anyway because handling it alone doesn't mean you can't share the after. His voice was lighter. Mine too. We were both less tangled up in the web I had spun because I was afraid of what would happen if he fell. People like to turn stories like this into proof of a point. I don't have a thesis beyond this. Love and money can live on the same street without marrying each other. Respect is the crossing guard. I gave a lot. He took it with thanks. Time passed. Somewhere in there our roles blurred and we both stopped asking the right questions. The right questions turned out to be small. Does this still make sense? Are we both choosing it? If not, what needs to change? There were ripples, of course. Lauren's parents were confused to learn that I wasn't part of the Christmas plan the way I had always been. She told me later they asked if I was angry. I am not angry. Anger has too much sugar in it, you crash afterward. I am a little older than I was and a little wiser than I wanted to have to be, and I am protective of the parts of me that still like to put on coffee at dawn and set out plates for people I love. I bought new plates, by the way. Nothing fancy, just ones without the chips. It felt like a small kindness to the table. On a rainy Saturday, we sorted through boxes in my basement that had become a museum of duplicates. 2 fondue sets, 3 extension cords knotted like poetry, and a stack of Christmas lights that might have belonged to a former tenant. We found his old construction paper ornaments tucked into a shoebox. He held the snowman with the glue fingerprint, the one that's half artifact, half accident. "You kept these?" he said, like I was the sort of man who might throw time away. "Of course," I said. He smiled with his mouth and with his eyes and with something around his shoulders that looked like a set-down burden. We threw out nothing that mattered and everything that didn't. A week later he asked if I'd look over a draft of a message he wanted to send to Lauren's family about Christmas. He had written 3 paragraphs and 12 apologies. I told him to make it 1 paragraph and 1 apology and 1 plan. He did. They said yes. The plan was simple: breakfast at my place, dinner at theirs, and a walk in between if the weather cooperated. He added a line about oranges and coffee and the record that skips. He said their living room is loud and happy and not mine, and that both can exist. I could have shouted, but I am trying very hard to be measured with the few years when my voice still matters. I don't pretend everything is fixed. Fixed is a word for clocks and fences. What we have now is better than fixed. It's maintained. It requires oil and attention and the occasional tightening of a screw you thought would stay tight by itself. Boundaries are not a one-time act. They are a posture. I stand a little straighter these days. He does too. Sometimes I picture the moment I pressed cancel as if it's a photograph, my hands on the laptop, the afternoon light making the screen look less smug, the sense of being very slightly afraid and very slightly brave at the same time. If I zoom out, I can see another picture layered beneath it, me holding a ladder while a boy I love learns to balance, both of us believing I'm keeping him safe. In the new picture I'm still there, still holding. The difference is that he's learned there's a way to climb without making someone else stand there every minute. The ladder hasn't moved. My job has. The next time the bank app sent a notification, it was to congratulate him for paying on time. Those messages always sound like a dog that wants a treat. I forwarded it to him with a single thumbs up because emojis accommodate pride without turning it into a parade. He responded with a photo of his cat sleeping in a sunbeam and the words, "We're okay." I believed him. More importantly, I believed me. I tell this story in the tone I wish more of us used, without the gavel, without the violin. There's no villain here. There is a man who loves his son, a son who loves his life, and a set of habits that needed a tune-up. I'm not the hero. I'm the mechanic. On a Tuesday that tasted like nothing special, I found myself reaching for the old impulse to say yes to something that wasn't asked. I stopped my hand like you stop a pot from boiling over. I looked around my quiet kitchen and said out loud, just to make it real, "We're good." It felt silly and it felt right. I do not need to turn every lesson into a ritual, but this one earned a sentence. And now when I picture this Christmas, I picture ordinary things in high resolution, the feel of orange oil on my fingers, the way the record pops before the first song, the scratch of my son's beard when we hug, the laughter from a living room I don't own that still welcomes me for dinner, the drive home under a sky that will be dark by 5 and tender anyway. I picture the wallet because I still plan to give it to him, not as a prize for good behavior but as a reliable bit of leather that will outlast the phase. Inside, I will keep the note. For whatever you carry next. I mean bills. I mean keys. I mean the weight of making good on your word. I mean the lightness that follows. I will set the table with the new plates and the old forks. I will warm the mugs in hot water like my mother did because hot coffee likes a warm cup. I will put the angel on the tree even though she lists sideways the way she always has. I will check that the star stays up with its folded post-it crutch because broken things can hold just fine when you stop insisting they be perfect. I will take a photo of my living room not to post or prove but because the room has held us for so long it deserves to be seen. If you are where I was, help wearing the costume of habit. This is what I can offer. It feels scary for about 10 minutes. And then it feels like a room with a window you forgot you could open. The air that comes in is not applause. It's oxygen. It makes other things possible, like honest conversations and fewer resentments, and breakfast plans made because you want to be together, not because a payment tied you by the ankle. The night after Paul and I made the new plan, I lay in bed and listened to the house breathe. Old houses do that. They sigh when the furnace kicks on and mumble when the wind turns the wrong way in the chimney. I counted out the history the way you count breaths when you're trying to sleep. The time he learned to ride a bike and I let go 1 second too soon and he learned anyway. The time he wore a suit to a job interview and looked both 12 and 40. The time he texted, just checking on you, for no reason other than to check. I thought about being a father as a series of tiny releases, hands off the back of the bike, off the balance beam, off the budget. None of those hands are withdrawal. They're respect. So yes, when he said he wasn't expecting me for Christmas, it cut like paper. And yes, the words I chose later. If you didn't expect me for Christmas, don't expect my money either. Landed like a small stone in a calm pond. The circles it made were the right size. They reached him. They reached me. They didn't swamp anyone's boat. We're still here, in the same lake, waving from different docks, paddling toward each other when we can, and fine when we can't. The morning after he made his first solo payment, I stood at my counter peeling an orange. The house smelled like citrus and coffee and old wood. I set the peels on a paper towel and pressed them with my thumb just to watch the oil spray into the air like a secret. I put the segments in a bowl the color of a robin's egg and thought, this is enough. Not all the time, not the dramatic, operatic enough people talk about on television. Just the kind that settles into your bones and changes the way you sit. Enough to stand up straight. Enough to love without keeping receipts. Summer will come again, and then fall, and then the year will turn. We will keep walking through rooms together, and sometimes apart. We will eat too much cheese and pretend we didn't. We will make new traditions and forgive the old ones for being stubborn. He will call me to ask which way to turn a stuck screw, and I will tell him lefty-loosey with the solemnity of a priest. He will forget, and then remember, and then teach someone else. That's the job. That's the joy. People like to end stories with a moral. If there is one here, it is very small and fits in your pocket like a good wallet. A father's generosity deserves respect. When it's taken for granted, the kindest gift you can give is a boundary. Not to punish. To protect love from the corrosion of resentment. To give both of you back to yourselves. Later, after the ladder and the coffee and the oranges and the talk about breakfast and dinner, after June cooled and July tried to shout, Paul texted me a photo of a list he'd made. It had lines like pay mortgage on the 2nd, call plumber for annual check, put away $50 for car stuff, breakfast with dad, bring beans. He is not a list person. He is becoming one. I put my phone down and laughed in the startled way you do when you see proof that your prayers were just a set of smaller, doable items all along. Then I did what I always do when I don't know what to do with gratitude. I wiped the counter. I watered the plant. I let the house be quiet, and I liked the quiet back. On the morning I am imagining, some future December with frost on the mailbox and the street polite with snow, the coffee will bloom and the record will skip and he will knock twice the way he did when he was 14 to pretend he had a secret code. I will open the door, and the cold will push in the way it always does and we will greet it like an old neighbor. He will hand me beans that allegedly changed his life. I will hand him an orange. We will sit, and we will talk, and we will not keep score. The day will be ours, not because money moved in the background, but because respect did. And when he leaves for dinner at Lauren's parents', and I rinse the mugs and set them to dry, I will do the small, ordinary things that have become my benediction. I will straighten the wreath. I will check the lock and set the heat down a few degrees because I was raised by a man who read thermostats like scripture. I will touch the old angel to make sure she's still leaning, and I will leave her be. I will sit in my chair and let the house be a house, and in that gentle, good quiet I will make a simple promise to myself I plan to keep. I will love my son without trying to be his solution. I will love myself enough to let him try first. I will carry what is mine. He will carry what is his. And we will meet in the middle with oranges and coffee and a record that skips just enough to remind us that what lasts rarely plays perfectly. A month after all that, I ran into my neighbor Ed while he was wrestling a snowblower that refused to believe in internal combustion. Ed is the kind of friend you acquire by sharing a fence and a willingness to hold a flashlight. He asked how my Christmas went. I told him the abbreviated version. He nodded like a man who has a son and a mortgage and a scar under his shirt. You know what my old man used to say? Ed asked. I braced for a bumper sticker. He'd say, son, I'll always open my door for you, but I won't carry you through it. Ed wiped his hands on his coat and added, took me until I was 35 to hear the difference. Then his snowblower made a noise like a lawn chair exploding and settled into a hum. Timing is everything. I saw my father in May. He's 87 and complains about the remote like it's a malicious animal. We sat at his kitchen table, which is the same table from my childhood, now with a burn mark shaped like Florida. He asked about Paul, and I told him the truth in a few easy sentences. My father never had much money to give, and he gave it anyway. He never had many words, and the ones he used were sturdy. He listened. He nodded. You did right, he said, then shoved a bowl of peanuts toward me like an award. If I'd had more, I'd have given more, he added, and I believed him. But I'm glad you stopped when stopping was the kind thing. He said it like he was talking about pruning a tree. Which, in a way, he was. Work kept me busy in the simple way that pays the light bill and the dentist. I took on a consulting project that required me to explain supply chain to a group of people who thought trucks appear by wishing. Paul asked me about it, and made a joke about me being the Gandalf of forklifts. I told him to at least pretend I was mysterious. He rolled his eyes the way he used to when I tried to glue a plastic model incorrectly, and he was 6. In July, he and Lauren hosted a cookout. I brought potato salad and a willingness to compliment things. The backyard was full of mismatched chairs and one heroic umbrella that kept finding the wind. Paul hovered over the grill with tongs like a conductor, moving hot dogs to safety and flipping burgers with the sort of care that says, I want everyone to have enough. He nudged a beer into my hand and said, You good? Like he meant it broadly. I said I was. A neighbor drifted over and asked how long Paul had had the house. He said 4 years, then looked at me in a way that gave me a half-second of credit without embarrassing either of us. It's home, he added. Lauren handed me a slice of watermelon that tasted like all the summers we'd managed to keep alive. The fireworks were early and ill-advised and perfect. Later that night, when the crowd thinned and the mosquitoes punched above their weight, Paul and I took out the trash together because we are men and that is how we end events, with bags and nods. He said, I got an offer for a lower insurance rate if I bundle. I did the math. He sounded like someone reporting a weather pattern. Good, I said. Bundle away. He grinned. Look at us, he said. 2 exciting guys. We weren't. It was glorious. August pressed down with the kind of heat that makes you think winter was a rumor. We spent one sticky Saturday replacing a bathroom fan. Halfway through, the breaker panel decided to be inscrutable. We traced wires like detectives, cursed gently, and finally fixed it with the magical combination of patience and a smaller screwdriver. He said, Thanks, in that low voice that men use when they mean it but don't want to make a ceremony. I said, Any time, and meant it, bounded by the new border I'd drawn. Help is sweeter when it's chosen. September reminded me that the year has a slope. I pulled the tree box a little closer to the front of the basement shelves, not as a summons, just as a promise. Paul texted me a photo of a calendar entry, breakfast at Dad's, dinner at Lauren's, and I put the phone down and let myself feel the steady click of something set right. That night I took the wallet out of the drawer, opened it, read the note, and closed it again. Not yet, I told myself. Not as a test. As timing. In one of those small, quiet ironies, the mortgage company sent me a letter in October reminding me that as a co-signer, I had rights to information. I smiled and put it in a file labeled Please Stop. The autodraft had been a convenience. Removing it had been a kindness, first to me, then to him. The letter felt like a wrong doorbell. I left it unanswered. We had a family birthday in November. Cake, candles, the ceremonial argument about whether to cut squares or wedges. My sister cornered me near the sink and asked if I felt vindicated. I know what she meant. People like neat endings with a bow, as if life is a store that gift wraps for free. I told her I felt relieved more than anything. Vindication is an online word. Relief is for kitchens and parking lots and men washing forks while a good song comes on the radio. A week before the holiday, I texted Paul a grocery list in the same tone he used to discuss the weather. Oranges, coffee, eggs, cinnamon rolls of the humble variety, real butter because he's finally at peace with it, napkins that aren't from a fast food bag. He responded with a thumbs up and unprompted. I'll be there by 8. I took a minute with that. I let it sink in until my rib cage remembered to expand. And since this is a confession in the style of the internet's living room, here is a thing I haven't said aloud. I had been afraid that setting a boundary would make me smaller in his eyes. It did not. It made me clearer. There's a difference. Smaller is what happens when you withdraw love to protect pride. Clearer is what happens when you protect love by withdrawing the parts that were never love to begin with: fear, obligation, the tired math of resentment. I wish I'd learned it sooner, but I'm glad I learned it at all. Some nights the house still feels big. I turn off the lights and listen to the furnace and the city and the own-breath noises you only hear when you're alone. I used to fill that quiet with television. Lately I let it be. I make a cup of tea I'll forget to finish. I stand at the window and watch the way a car's headlights paint the walls in moving shapes. I practice holding the feeling without reaching for my phone or a plan. It's a small muscle. It's getting stronger. On a cold morning that didn't try to be dramatic, I got a text from Paul. Mortgage posted. Felt weirdly great. I told him I was proud. He said, "It's mostly boring." I replied, "That's the point. Boring is a layer of safety you build so that the exciting parts of your life aren't about emergencies. The internet doesn't clap for boring. The heart does." I ran into Lauren at the store the week before Thanksgiving. She was in the baking aisle holding 2 kinds of sugar like they were a multiple-choice test. We chatted about nothing that matters to strangers and everything that matters to people who are trying. At one point she said very simply, "Thank you for being patient with us." I said just as simply, "Thank you for loving my son." This is the orchestra cue where some people want violins. We were 2 humans near flower. It was enough. Here's another little scene, not flashy, that sticks. I sat in Paul's driveway one afternoon waiting for him to get home so we could install a new light fixture he bought on sale because he's finally discovered the gospel of a good sale. A kid down the street was learning to ride a bike. His mother ran behind him, a hand on the back of the seat, and I watched the microsecond when she let go, and he didn't know it yet, and then the second when he did. He wobbled, then straightened, then shouted, "I'm doing it!" She clapped and jogged and didn't grab. I sat there on my tailgate and thought, there it is again, the whole job in one wobbly sentence. The day before the holiday, I tested the turntable to make sure the belt hadn't decided to retire. It spun like a citizen. I wiped the platter with a cloth I only use for this because even I have rituals. I set out the mugs. I found the angel. I wrote his name on a place card I don't need because I know where he sits. Then I sat down and simply let the room look back at me. I don't know if houses remember. I like to think they do. This one holds a lot. It has light from mornings when we were late and laughter from nights when we were fine. It has the footprint of a boy who ran inside with wet shoes and the patient scraped marks of furniture moved slightly to try something new. I sat and let the room speak in the only language it has: shadows, corners, the particular sound of the heater catching. People ask, in these stories, if the conversation, the line I used, the boundary, worked. Worked is a word from office life. In family, I prefer grew. Did we grow? Yes. Into clearer shapes. Into roles that fit our ages. Into a rhythm that forgives the skip and loves the song. The line, "If you didn't expect me for Christmas, don't expect my money either," wasn't a weapon. It was a measuring stick. It showed us where we were and how far we had drifted. It let us move our chairs back to the table. There have been moments since when my hand reached for the old habit, like a tongue searching for a missing tooth. In those moments I repeat a tiny rule I wrote for myself on the back of an envelope and stuck in the drawer with the batteries: give freely, or don't give. If I can't give something without the weight of expectation, I wait until I can. If I can't get to that feeling, I don't do it. It's a simple filter. It catches more than I expected. It leaves me with lighter pockets and a lighter chest. And if you need an image to carry, take this one: a father in a quiet kitchen, peeling an orange while the record hums, the house not performing but being, the phone face down, the bank app asleep, the boundary not a wall but a handrail, cool and sturdy, something to hold as he and his adult son walk down the same stairs at different paces, side by side when they can be, calling out to each other when they need to. meeting at the landing to laugh about a skip they both now hear and both now forgive. Christmas morning will come the way it always comes in this latitude, late light, a sky that looks like it's holding its breath. I will wake before the alarm because men my age have alarms built into their bones. I will run hot water into the mugs and line them on the counter like faithful soldiers. I will crack eggs into a bowl, add pepper with the impatience of someone who has never learned to count shakes, and set the cinnamon rolls on a tray that knows their shape. I will slice oranges and smudge my fingers with their oil, and the house will smell like a memory I haven't lived yet. At 7:58, the truck door will shut outside. At 8 the knock. I will say, "It's open," because it will be. He will step inside and the cold will walk in with him before it remembers its manners. He will hold up a bag of coffee like a trophy, and I will hold up a peeler like a man with a very specific plan. We will move around each other the way people do when they've cooked together before, swapping places without choreography, bumping hips on purpose just to laugh. The record will scratch, and he will say, "I've missed that sound." And I will say, "Me too." And that will be the whole truth. We will eat from plates that are new and forks that are not. We will talk about work and about nothing and about the way the cat has learned to open a cabinet door. He will say he changed the air filter on schedule. I will pretend not to be impressed and fail. We will open small gifts in the quiet before the day spreads out its arms. I will hand him the wallet, not as a medal but as a tool, and he will read the note and put it in his pocket without a speech, which is the best kind of thank you. I will put on a coat, and we will take a short walk around the block, just once, just to say we did. The sky will be pale and brave. The world will be itself. We will be ourselves, two men related by love and by choice, practicing the art of leaving each other better than we found each other. When he leaves for dinner, I will stand in the doorway like I always do and watch him go. I will wave, not like a flag but like a man. I will go back inside and rinse the mugs and let them dry on their own. I will turn off the tree and the room will keep its shape. I will sit down and not feel punished by the quiet. I will feel held by it. And if the good,